SSH into VirtualBox guest, connection refused. Setup. Windows 7 64-bit host OS running VirtualBox 4.2, with Ubuntu 12.04 guest OS. Open server is installed and running. SSH localhost connects locally in the guest machine. Can SSH to external servers, no outbound Windows firewall rule blocking port 22. Can ping the IP of the guest, 192.168.56.101. Problem. Using PuTTY to SSH to the IP of the guest OS, 192.168.56.101, PuTTY returns almost immediately with network error, connection refused. How can I diagnose an AMP, resolve this issue?
Are you sure the IP is for the guest OS? I had the same problem and it turned out that the IP I had been using all along, the 192.168.56.101 was actually the Windows interface IP and the host OS IP was 192.168.56.103. You can verify by doing ifconfig on both. Note, I had also set up a static IP which it turns out I didn't need at all. In case you try from the start, I found this tutorial to be better.
None of the other solutions are good because there is no point to SSH to your guest via bridge if the guest will lose access to internet. All the other solutions above tell you to build a rocket to cross the road. Scenario. Host Ubuntu Desktop 16.04. Guest Ubuntu Server 16.04, running on VirtualBox 5. Problem. SSH connection refused. Solution. Shut your guest Ubuntu down. On VirtualBox, go to Setting in GT, Network in GT, Adapter 1 in GT, Advanced in GT, Port Forwarding. Name equals SSH host port equals 2022, or any port but 22, guest port 22. Reboot your guest. On your host, open a PuTTY or whatever you use for SSH. SSH user at 127.0.0.1p 2022, or any port you mentioned as host port. Have fun, you are in.
The following works for me. Before. After. So, basically I changed part of the file, /etc/network/interfaces, as follows. Before. After. Works. SSH username at 192.168.56.101.
Hey, I'm just returning to the first page I found on my mini saga of troubleshooting and research, hoping this tutorial I made can save someone else all the hassle. Start to end guide on setting up a CentOS server with Oracle VM. Part 1. Virtual Machine Setup. Install Oracle VM VirtualBox in the expansion pack here. Download the CentOS minimal installation here. For this tutorial, I'm using an Ubuntu client. The ISO for that can be found here. Create the CentOS server and your client virtual machines. Set up the CentOS VM. A. Open installation destination and press back. B. Go to network and add hostname if you want to change your hostname, which I recommend. C. Feel free to configure items under localization. Everything else is handled automatically by VirtualBox. D. Press Begin Installation. E. Create both a root account and a normal account. Make sure the latter has administrator rights. F. Once the loading bar is full, press Reboot. Set up your client VM. A. Install VirtualBox Guest Editions. Part 2. Virtual Network Configuration. In VirtualBox, press Ctrl+W. Create a new host network. A. If you receive an error, this is likely due to your host OS causing VirtualBox problems installing its drivers. You will need to fully uninstall VirtualBox and reinstall the latest version. Make sure to run the installation as admin. Under the Adapter tab, select Configure Adapter manually. For Windows, open the command prompt and type config. Scroll through the output until you find the name of the host-only network you just created. Use the IP4 address and mask for the VirtualBox network configuration. Close the Host Network Manager. Open the settings of your client VM. Under Network, enable Adapter 2, select Host-Only Adapter, and then the name is the name of your newly created host-only network. Repeat the last step for your CentOS server VM. Additionally, go to Adapter 1's port forwarding under the Advanced tab and create a new rule. Set both the host and guest ports to 22. Before closing the advanced settings, note the MAC address. Part 3. Server Configuration. Launch your CentOS VM. Run yum check update, yum upgrade, and yum clean all. Run and share. Hit enter over editor connection. You should see an O3S and a wired connection 1. A. If you have two connection options but are unsure of which is which, go to edit 1. If the device value matches the MAC address seen under Adapter 1 from Part 2, then it's your NAT connection, otherwise it's your host-only connection. Edit your host-only connection. A. Set IP4 configuration to manual. B. Show IP4 configuration. C. In VirtualBox, press Ctrl+W. Next to your host-only network name, you should see an IP address /mask combination of the form IP mask. On your server under IP4 configuration, this is what you will type after pressing an LT, add dot and GT. D. Go down and press OK. Make sure Automatically Connect is checked for both your host-only and NAT connections. Navigate out of NG and reboot. Part 4. Client Configuration and AMP Usage. Boot your client VM. Optional, edit /etc/host to include the align of the form. Serve_IP_address, hostname where serve_IP_address is the IP address of your CentOS server, second output of hostname I in your CentOS terminal. This will allow you to use whatever you chose for hostname interchangeably with the IP address of your server. I typically just set this to the hostname chosen in Part 2. If everything worked up to this point, you should be able to SSH user at hostname into your CentOS server. If this is not the case, you may need to install OpenSH Client and OpenSH Server on your machines. Part 5. Serving up websites. This is an excellent guide on hosting your own websites from a setup as described above.
you want to support the channel, please hit subscribing